I own this place. I own you.
The courtroom froze. Diamonds sparkled on her wrist as she leaned back, smirking. "The truth?" she said, voice dripping with arrogance. "I own this place. I own you." Judge Judy didn't flinch. She just tilted her head and calm, calculating, like a lion eyeing prey that didn't know it was already caught. When the gavel struck, the sound wasn't justice. It was a warning. What happened next? Nobody in that courtroom was ready for it. Before I reveal, tell me, where are you watching from? And don't forget to smash that subscribe button. The courtroom door opened as if it belonged to her. Every heel click on marble sounded choreographed. A silk blazer the color of champagne shimmered beneath the harsh fluorescent lights. Diamonds glittered across her wrist, catching every curious eye. Reporters lifted phones like weapons, capturing the arrival they had waited for all week. The princess of privilege versus the working woman. Camilla didn't glance at the plaintiff's table. She headed straight for the mirror-polished defense bench, dropped her designer purse beside the chair, and sighed loud enough for everyone to hear. "Can we make this quick? I have a charity gala tonight." Her voice carried the tone of someone used to being applauded, not questioned. Across the aisle sat Rosa Martinez, her former assistant, a quiet woman in a plain blue blouse, fingers folded tightly over a worn folder. The contrast between them looked almost cinematic. Gold against grey, arrogance against exhaustion. Judge Judy entered with her usual calm precision. The chatter evaporated. Camilla smiled, not in respect but recognition. "Finally," she whispered to her lawyer, "the TV legend herself. This should be fun." Judy took her seat, eyes scanning the courtroom like a lens adjusting focus. "Case 3274, the clerk announced. Rosa Martinez versus Camilla Thorn. Claim for unpaid wages, emotional distress, and falsified employment record." Rosa's eyes stayed on the table. Camilla leaned back, crossing her legs as if modeling for a camera only she could see. When the judge asked if both sides were ready, Camilla answered before her counsel could speak. "Oh, we're ready. Some people just don't know how gratitude works." Her lawyer's hand froze halfway to his briefcase, silent plea for restraint that she ignored. A ripple of murmurs rolled through the audience. Judge Judy's gaze didn't move. "Miss Thorn, you will speak when spoken to." Camilla chuckled, eyes glittering. "Of course, Your Honor, I forget. Humility is your brand." Even the bailiff looked up. The air thickened. Judy's gavel remained still, her silence far louder than any reprimand. Rosa's breathing quickened. Her fingers trembled, but she kept her eyes down. For a moment, the entire room became a study in contrast. One woman built of entitlement, the other of endurance. Then Camilla leaned forward, resting her chin on manicured fingers. "Let's just agree this whole thing is ridiculous," she said. "People like her survive because people like me exist." Gasps rippled through the benches. Judy's expression didn't change. Only her pen tapped once, sharp, deliberate, like a clock striking midnight. Camilla's smile widened, misreading silence for submission. But when Judge Judy finally looked up, the calm in her eyes carried weight enough to break marble. "Miss Thorn," she said quietly, "we will see what existence owes." The gavel lifted, and the arrogance began its countdown. The echo of the gavel still hung in the air when Rosa stood. Her chair scraped softly against the floor that took a fragile sound swallowed. By the tension that filled the room, Camilla rolled her eyes. "Finally," she muttered. "For the performance begins." Rosa's hands trembled as she clutched the folder, its edges worn, corners bent from too many nights rehearsing this moment alone. She walked to the stand with hesitant steps, each one measured as if she feared even gravity might betray her. Judge Judy nodded gently. "Ms. Martinez, you may begin." Rosa took a breath that seemed to carry years of swallowed words. "I worked for Ms. Thorn for 14 months, she said, her accent faint but steady. "During that time I was her personal assistant, driver, and," her voice wavered, "sometimes the person she yelled at when her father did not answer her calls." Camilla exhaled loudly, tossing her hair. "Your Honor, are we really going to sit through this emotional monologue?" Judy's gaze flicked toward her, cold and surgical. "You will sit through truth, Miss Thorn, whether it flatters you or not." The audience murmured approval. Rosa's eyes darted down again. She opened the folder, revealing timesheets, receipts, and one photograph. A text message screenshot dated 2 years ago. You don't get paid to think. You get paid to obey. Rosa's voice broke slightly. That was her message after I asked for payment for 70 extra hours that week. She said if I ever mentioned it again, I'd never work in Los Angeles again. Judge Judy leaned forward, her tone even but heavy. Do you have any records of payment for that time? Rosa shook her head. No, Your Honor. I kept everything she gave me as except money. I never saw that. Camilla smirked, whispering to her attorney, This is going to be adorable. Judy's gaze snapped back. Did you just say something, Ms. Thorn? Camilla blinked. I said nothing worth repeating. Good, Judy replied, because truth tends to repeat itself just fine. Rosa swallowed. I am not here for money, she said softly. I want her to admit what she did, to say I mattered. That line changed the air. The courtroom grew still. No murmurs, no typing. Even the bailiff's stance softened slightly. Judy's expression didn't change, but her eyes did, a flicker of empathy behind discipline. You may step down for now, Ms. Martinez, she said. You have spoken enough for truth to start breathing. As Rosa returned to her seat, Camilla stretched like a cat preparing to strike. Well, she said, smiling. That was touching, truly. Should I cry now or later? Her lawyer's hand froze again, but it was too late. Judge Judy's pen stopped mid-note. She looked up slowly. Miss Thorn, she said, her tone measured, would you like to explain this employment contract with your signature missing? The sound of papers rustling felt like thunder, and for the first time, Camilla blinked. The folder hit the desk like a gunshot. Silence swallowed the room. Whole. Camilla's smile twitched. A single crack in marble. Judge Judy slid the documents forward with the precision of a surgeon making the first incision. These, she said, tapping the papers, are your employee records. Ms. Thorn, would you care to explain why they list no parent company, no HR authorization, and, most notably, no signature from your father's corporation? Camilla blinked, then laughed. I don't handle paperwork. That's what accountants are for. Judy didn't blink. And yet the bank account these checks came from, she paused, turning one page, is registered solely under your name. The air changed temperature. Reporters shifted in their seats. Rosa's eyes widened slightly, her fingers digging into the folder in her lap. Camilla's lawyer stood halfway. To objection, Your Honor. This information wasn't presented in discovery. Judy's tone didn't rise, but the power behind it did, because it wasn't requested. You assumed the defense rested on inherited authority, not personal responsibility. That assumption was your mistake. A low murmur rippled through the room. Camilla's laugh faltered. You're implying I paid her out of my own money? That's ridiculous. My father handles everything. Judy's gaze didn't move. According to the bank, the funds came from an account labeled Thorn Enterprises Subprivate 9. That account was opened by you 6 weeks before Ms. Martinez's employment began. The courtroom went still. Even the fluorescent lights seemed quieter. Camilla's voice thinned. There's just an account name, a formality. Judy's pen tapped once. A formality that paid wages under a false company header. That, Miss Thorn, is not arrogance, as that's fraud. Camilla's chair scraped against the floor as she half rose. Fraud, you can't accuse me of— I'm not accusing, Judy interrupted, calm as steel. I'm observing. There's a difference. Observation becomes accusation when evidence stops needing imagination. The words hit harder than any gavel. Camilla's confidence began to splinter. Visible now, small but real. Her father's name no longer shielded her. The courtroom had turned from an audience into witnesses. Rosa watched, tears held tight behind her composure. For the first time she wasn't shrinking. She was watching arrogance unravel in real time. Camilla's lawyer whispered urgently, "Say nothing more." But silence wasn't her strength. She pointed at Rosa instead. She's manipulating you. She planned this. She stole from me first. Judy closed the folder softly as if sealing a coffin. Ms. Thorn, truth doesn't need accomplices. It only needs time. And yours is running out. The gavel struck once, sharp, final. From this moment, Judge Judy said, this court acknowledges personal responsibility on record. The next witness will speak under oath. Camilla froze, realization dawning too late. For the first time, her silence wasn't power. It was fear pretending not to shake. The gavel's echo hadn't faded when the first whispers began. Phones lifted like fireflies. Headlines were being written before the truth had even cooled, and at the center of it all, Camilla Thorn sat frozen, a queen realizing her crown had just turned to glass. Judge Judy's words still hung in the air, steady and cold. Personal responsibility on record. Camilla's lawyer leaned toward her, voice a desperate whisper. "We need a recess now." Judy looked up, one brow raised. Denied. The courtroom's murmur stopped mid-breath. "No," Judy continued, her tone like a closing door. "We are just getting started." Camilla's hands gripped the table. The diamonds on her wrist no longer sparkled. They shook. "Your Honor," her lawyer tried again, "this is highly prejudicial." "What's prejudicial," Judy interrupted, "is thinking wealth exempts you from truth." The words landed heavy. Rosa looked down, a quiet tear rolling across her cheek, not from sadness but release. It was the sound of years of silence finally exhaling. Judy signaled toward the bailiff. "Bring in the next witness." A door opened at the side, slow, deliberate. Every camera turned. The soft steps that followed belonged to an older woman in a plain beige dress. Grey hair tied back, hands clasped nervously around a rosary. Camilla's jaw tightened. "Oh, for heaven's sake!" Judy's look cut her short. "You will remain silent until spoken to." The woman took the stand. Her voice trembled at first, but steadied under Judy's calm. "My name is Maria Flores. I was the housekeeper at the Thorn residence for 11 years. She paused, eyes flicking toward Camilla. "I saw things. After Rosa left, Miss Thorn..." She shredded papers, a stack of them, said, "No one will touch me, not even the judge." The words landed like a match in gasoline. Gasps. A few muffled "oh my gods" from the audience. Camilla stood halfway, face red. She's lying. She's older. She doesn't remember. Judy didn't look up from her notes. "Sit down, Miss Thorn." Camilla's voice cracked. "She's trying to ruin me." "Ruin?" Judy asked softly. "Truth cannot ruin what was already broken." The cameras caught everything. The tremor in Camilla's voice, the stiffness in her posture, the growing fear behind her eyes. The performance of control was slipping, frame by frame. Rosa watched in silence, her hands clasped tightly, a prayer without words. For once she wasn't invisible. She was seen. Judy closed her notebook and looked directly at the defense table. "Ms. Thorn," she said, "your credibility just followed those papers into the shredder." Then, turning to the bailiff, she said evenly, "Prepare the court for testimony continuation. The next witness will confirm or contradict what we've just heard." Camilla's eyes flicked to her lawyer, panic rising. "Fix this," she hissed through clenched teeth. "Or you're fired." The lawyer didn't answer. Because for the first time, even he knew she already was. The courtroom felt colder now that the luxury perfume that once followed Camilla Thorn had turned stale. In the air, the scent of panic trying to mask truth. Maria Flores stood small but unshaken, her voice the quiet thunder Camilla never saw coming. Judge Judy leaned slightly forward. "Mrs. Flores," she said, "you are under oath. Tell this court what you witnessed after Ms. Martinez's departure." Maria clasped the rosary tighter, her knuckles pale. "I was cleaning the study the morning after Miss Rosa left. The shredder was running. Miss Thorn was tearing up papers. I asked if she wanted me to empty it, and she said, 'No one will touch me, not even the judge.'" The audience stirred. The words echoed across the walls like an old curse finally spoken aloud. Camilla's lawyer tried to stand. "Objection, hearsay. Overruled," Judy said, cutting him off before the sentence finished. "She is describing direct observation." Her tone was calm, surgical, not anger, just precision. Maria continued, tears welling now. "I saw her burn some of the shredded papers in the fireplace. She told me it was just trash, but the envelopes, they had bank seals." Gasps rolled through the audience. The bailiff shot a look toward the gallery to restore silence. Camilla clenched her fists. "She's making it up." Judy turned slowly, voice measured. "Miss Thorn, if you interrupt again, I will hold you in contempt. You can't try me." The exchange froze time. Even the cameras seemed afraid to move. Camilla sat down, jaw locked. The arrogance that once filled every inch of her body had shrunk into tight, nervous gestures, tapping fingers, shaking leg, darting eyes. Judy turned back to the witness. "Mrs. Flores, why come forward now?" Maria's gaze softened. Because I have seen too many people hurt and stay quiet. Rosa did nothing wrong. She worked and she was kind. And when she left, that house felt emptier. Not because she was gone, but because truth went with her. Judy's pen stopped moving. That line hung in the air like scripture. Camilla's lips quivered. Part rage, part fear, part disbelief that her empire was being undone by a housekeeper's honesty. "Thank you, Mrs. Flores," Judy said gently. "You may step down," Maria nodded, wiping her eyes. As she walked past Camilla, the younger woman turned away sharply, but not fast enough to hide the tremor in her jaw. The courtroom breathed again, but only slightly. Rosa reached for Maria's hand as she returned to her seat. Two women bound by truth rather than status. Judy closed the folder, gaze steady. "This court will adjourn briefly," she said, "but understand, this is no longer a question of wages. This is about integrity." As the gavel struck, Camilla leaned to her lawyer and whispered through gritted teeth, "Fix this, or I'll bury you with me." Her lawyer didn't reply. Some wars he knew were already lost. If you were sitting in that courtroom, what would you do? Stay silent or speak up like Maria did? The courtroom lights hummed like judgment waiting to fall. The gavel's echo had barely faded when the cameras clicked again, flashes chasing the scent of scandal. But the next sound wasn't from a reporter. It was from the clerk, holding a sealed envelope stamped with gold ink. "From the office of Richard Thorn," the clerk announced. The name rippled through the room like thunder across marble. Camilla straightened instantly, the smallest smirk finding her lips. "Finally," she whispered. "Daddy remembers his daughter." Judge Judy raised a brow, signaling the clerk to hand over the document. She broke the seal, unfolded the paper, and read in silence. Every eye watched her face, searching for the slightest shift, the tiniest sign of intimidation. None came. When she finally looked up, her tone was steady, dry, controlled. "This letter," she said, "is not a defense. It is an attempt at persuasion." Camilla blinked. "Persuasion?" "Yes," Judy replied, "though some might call it interference." The air went still. Judy began reading aloud. "To the Honorable Judge Judith Scheindlin, I trust this case can be resolved discreetly. My daughter may have acted impulsively, but she remains a valuable member of our community. Her intentions were never malicious. I request leniency." The words landed like dust, faint, arrogant, suffocating. Camilla smiled faintly, expecting relief. Instead, Judy folded the letter once, neatly, deliberately, and set it aside. "Mr. Thorn," she said, addressing the paper like a person, "power does not substitute for character. And influence does not erase evidence." Camilla's smile flickered. "He's just asking for fairness," she said, voice rising. Judy turned to her, eyes calm but cutting. "Fairness requires humility, Ms. Thorn, something your father's money seems unable to purchase." The courtroom stirred again, quiet gasps, exchanged glances, a camera zooming in on Camilla's paling face. Rosa sat still, eyes lowered, clutching her folded notes. The faintest tremor in her breath betrayed both fear and validation. Camilla's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Your Honor, surely you don't intend to disregard a direct statement from Mr. Thorn." "I don't disregard," Judy interrupted. "I prioritize. And in this courtroom, truth ranks above pedigree." The silence that followed felt like justice itself taking a deep breath. Camilla leaned forward, voice trembling with forced control. "You think you can talk to my father like that?" Judy met her stare without blinking. "I just did." The crowd's murmur swelled before the bailiff's glare restored order. Camilla sat back, her posture collapsing an inch at a time. The first crack in her arrogance had become a visible fracture. For the first time, she wasn't just fighting Rosa. She was fighting the shadow that raised her. Judy turned her attention toward the plaintiff's table. "Ms. Martinez," she said quietly, "you mentioned something earlier, a recording, wasn't it?" Rosa nodded slowly. "Yes, Your Honor." The air tightened again. "Then let us hear it," Judy said. "Let truth speak for itself." No one breathed as Rosa reached into her purse. The soft rustle of plastic and paper was louder than any outburst. When her trembling hand emerged, it held a small silver flash drive. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive, just ordinary truth wrapped in courage. Judge Judy nodded to the bailiff, who took the drive carefully and handed it to the court technician. "Your Honor," Rosa said quietly, "this is from a night 2 months before I left." She didn't know I could hear her. Camilla leaned back in her chair, the smirk already rebuilding. Oh, please. What is this, another fake sob story? Judy ignored her. Play the recording. The speakers crackled to life. Soft laughter, glasses clinking, voices echoing from what sounded like a party. Then a familiar tone cut through. You think the law scares me? Camilla's recorded voice bragged. Even Judge Judy would bow to my father's name. People like her need people like me to stay relevant. The courtroom froze. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It weighed. Heavy. Humid. Final. Reporters leaned forward. Cameras zoomed. Even the bailiff's hand hovered near the gavel, as if instinctively ready to punctuate the moment. Camilla's face drained of color. That's edited. That's not real. Judy didn't blink. Do you deny it's your voice? I said thousands of things, Camilla snapped. People record everything nowadays. This is invasion of privacy. Judy folded her hands, tone surgical. Then perhaps next time choose your words like they're on record, because in the age of truth everything is. Laughter rippled through the back benches, quick, nervous, stifled. The kind of laughter born from shock and poetic irony. Camilla slammed her palm against the table. This is a setup. You're all jealous, every one of you. Judy's gavel struck once. Enough. Her voice didn't need to rise. Its precision did the work. So you have insulted the court, the plaintiff, and now the very concept of accountability. Rosa watched quietly, eyes glassy but unflinching. Camilla turned on her, venomous. You think this makes you right? You were nothing without me. Rosa's reply came soft but lethal. And now you're nothing because of me. The line sliced through the room like cold wind. Judy let the silence stretch, exactly long enough for truth to settle where denial once stood. Then she spoke, voice steady, deliberate. Ms. Thorn, you wanted the world to see your power. Congratulations. She gestured toward the cameras still flashing, the phone still recording. They just did. Camilla slumped back, her composure dissolving into disbelief. The empire she flaunted had become her evidence. Judy leaned forward, her tone lowering to something almost poetic. Pride is a loud thing, Ms. Thorn, but justice prefers silence. The gavel struck once more, and in that sound, Arrogance finally cracked wide open. The last echo of the recording still hovered in the air like smoke after a gunshot. Camilla Thorn sat perfectly still, the stillness of disbelief, of someone trying to rewind a moment that had already destroyed them. No one looked away. Not even the cameras dared to blink. Judge Judy let the silence stretch, an invisible rope tightening around the defendant's pride. Do you have anything else to say, Ms. Thorn? Camilla's voice wavered. You're all making a mistake. This is a witch hunt. Her lawyer pinched the bridge of his nose, exhausted. Your Honor, your client, Judy interrupted, just admitted that she believes accountability is persecution. I see no witch, only consequence. The gallery murmured, that dangerous hum of public reckoning. Camilla's gaze darted across the room, from the bailiff to the audience, then to Rosa. For the first time she looked small. You think this ruins me? She snapped suddenly. My father owns half this city. One court ruling doesn't mean anything. Judge Judy's gavel struck once. The sound was thunder on glass. Ms. Thorn, this court doesn't measure worth in square footage. A camera flash illuminated her face, catching the first tear she didn't mean to show. She wiped it quickly, pretending it was anger. The judge turned toward Rosa's lawyer. Mr. Klein, you mentioned additional evidence? He nodded and stepped forward, holding up a printed transaction summary. Yes, Your Honor. We obtained a forensic audit from the plaintiff's bank. It traces wage payments directly from Ms. Thorn's private account to a dummy vendor, then rerouted back to her in full within 48 hours. Judy's eyebrow lifted. So the wages were paid on paper, but the money never reached the employee? Correct. Rosa looked down, tears slipping silently. It wasn't triumph. It was vindication soaked in fatigue. Camilla's lawyer whispered frantically, We can challenge chain of custody. Judy heard it anyway. You can challenge gravity, counselor, but the floor will still catch you. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel. It was cathartic. The room exhaling months of disbelief. Camilla's hands trembled now. You can't do this to me, she hissed. Judy leaned forward, her voice quiet and devastating. I'm not doing anything to you, Miss Thorn. You built this yourself, and brick by brick, lie by lie. Camilla stared back, her facade crumbling like porcelain. Behind her eyes, the fight began to shift, not to win, but to survive. Rosa's lawyer exchanged a glance with the judge. "Your Honor," he said, "we also have one more record, a signed letter of instruction sent to the bank by Ms. Thorn herself." The courtroom gasped. Camilla froze. "What letter?" Judy tapped her pen once. "The one that might decide whether this is arrogance or intent. Do you think remorse can ever erase guilt? Or should justice stand no matter how sorry someone becomes?" The letter slid across the bench like a final verdict before the gavel even moved. The courtroom was so quiet that even the rustle of paper sounded like thunder. Camilla's reflection in the polished wood trembled, her own face staring back, unrecognizable. Judge Judy opened the letter, eyes narrowing slightly as she read. "Signed and dated by Miss Camilla Thorn," she said aloud, her voice as calm as ice. "Instruction to reverse payment to employee account within 48 hours, citing clerical error. That's a very specific kind of mistake." Camilla's lawyer whispered, "Don't answer. Don't say a word." But silence had never been her language. "It wasn't like that," she blurted. I just wanted to handle things myself." Rosa was being dramatic. "Ms. Thorn," Judy cut in, "the record shows you intentionally withheld payment. The only thing dramatic here is the effort it took to hide it." Camilla's jaw locked. She tried to hold the stare, but Judy's calm dismantled her faster than anger ever could. Across the aisle, Rosa sat still, watching, not with hate, but with something heavier, understanding. Camilla's voice cracked. "You don't understand. Everyone expects me to be perfect. My father, the press, the company—" Judy tilted her head. "So you punish others to feel powerful." The room went still again. Camilla swallowed hard. "You think I wanted this? I never even wanted that stupid company. I just wanted him to notice me." Her voice broke on the last word, a hymn. It was as if the air changed color. Every inch of her expensive perfection faltered. Makeup streaked, posture slumped, diamonds catching the harsh light like tiny shards of guilt. Judy's tone softened, just barely. "Ms. Thorn, the need to be seen doesn't justify hurting others. Power isn't proof of love." Camilla wiped her cheek, smudging mascara like ink bleeding through truth. "He only calls when I embarrass him. Maybe this is the only way he'll finally look at me." For the first time, the crowd didn't gasp. They just watched. And in that quiet, judgment turned into empathy's uneasy cousin, pity. Rosa looked down, tears gathering. Even she seemed unsure what to feel. Judge Judy leaned back, folding the letter carefully. "Then let me give you what your father never did. Attention that demands accountability." Camilla's head lifted slowly. Hope and fear tangled in her eyes. "Because," Judy continued, "what you call attention, the law calls consequence." The gavel hovered mid-air. "Before this court issues further rulings," Judy said, "we'll hear from one final source." A door opened at the side of the courtroom. The bailiff announced, "Richard Thorn appearing in person." Camilla's head whipped around, her breath caught, and for the first time in her life, she didn't know whether to stand, run, or cry. The courtroom doors opened, but this time there was no flash, no sound, no ceremony. Richard Thorn entered quietly, and somehow that silence was louder than every headline his name had ever made. Camilla's breath hitched like a child caught in the middle of a lie. He wasn't what the tabloids promised. No glitter, no entourage, just an older man in a dark grey suit that fit like armor. His expression wasn't anger. It was absence. He didn't look at the cameras, didn't even glance at the press gallery. His eyes went straight to his daughter, and the weight in that stare said everything words could not. "Mr. Thorn," Judy began evenly, "you are not a party to this case. However, given your daughter's repeated references to your name and company, you may speak if you wish to clarify." He nodded once. "I will." His voice was calm, low, almost tired. Camilla sat upright, her eyes bright with something desperate. "Daddy, tell them you'll fix this." He didn't answer her. He looked at the judge. "I came here to apologize." The gallery gasped. Even Judy paused slightly. "For years," Richard said, "I taught my daughter that success was measured by control. That money could solve discomfort, and discomfort was the enemy." He took a breath. "I gave her everything except the one thing she needed, consequence. Camilla's jaw trembled. No, that's not true. You said— He cut her off gently. I said you were my legacy, but I was wrong. You're my reflection, and I don't like what I see. Every word seemed to chip away at the fortress she'd built around herself. The confident posture dissolved. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Judy leaned slightly forward, her tone soft but piercing. Mr. Thorn, are you confirming that your daughter was acting independently in all business and financial matters related to Ms. Martinez? Yes, he said quietly. I cut her off 6 months before this began. She's had no access to company funds since then. The revelation hit like a storm. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief, the irony sharp enough to taste. The billionaire's daughter, the woman who claimed to own everyone in the room, was broke. Camilla turned to him, eyes wide, voice cracking. You cut me off? You didn't even tell me— He looked at her for the first time, truly looked. Because I wanted to see who you were without my name. Now I know. Silence. No one breathed. The gavel didn't dare move. Judy's gaze shifted between them, her tone measured and moral. Then this case isn't about money at all. It's about what happens when love is mistaken for ownership. Camilla's voice was barely a whisper. I just wanted them to fear me, not forget me. Judy's eyes softened, but her words did not. Ms. Thorn, she said, the tragedy isn't that they feared you. It's that they stopped respecting you. The gavel struck once. Sharp, the sound of illusion collapsing into truth. When the gavel fell, it didn't sound like judgment, and it sounded like exhaustion. The storm had passed, but the silence it left behind was heavier than thunder. Camilla Thorn sat perfectly still, mascara streaked, her father's words echoing in the hollow space where Arrogance used to live. Judge Judy gathered the scattered papers on her desk with the precision of ritual. Each motion, deliberate, calm, final, felt like the slow closing of a door. Mr. Thorn, she said without looking up, you may step down. The court will proceed to settlement matters. He nodded once and walked out without another glance at his daughter. Cameras followed him, desperate for reaction. But he gave them nothing, not a word, not a look back. Camilla's head turned toward the door as it closed behind him. The faintest sound escaped her throat. Not a sob, not a word, just a small broken exhale. Across the room, Rosa watched. She didn't look triumphant. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes after years of fighting to be heard. Her lawyer leaned toward her. You've won, Rosa. She shook her head softly. Nobody wins in rooms like this. Judge Judy lifted her gaze again. Ms. Martinez, your claim for unpaid wages and damages is hereby granted. The defendant is ordered to make full restitution within 60 days. Additionally, she paused, letting the next words fall with purpose. The court requires a public statement of apology from Ms. Thorn, acknowledging her misconduct in writing and on record. A collective murmur rose in the gallery. Camilla blinked. What? An apology, Judy said. Not a performance. Not a press release. The kind that demands humility. Camilla tried to speak, but her voice betrayed her, trembling, unsure. Rosa looked down, hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her eyes filled again. Not from vengeance, but from something quieter. The ache of seeing the person who once towered over her, now small enough to pity. The cameras turned to Camilla, lenses hungry for her next outburst. But none came. Her jaw flexed once, twice. Then she simply whispered, Yes, Your Honor. The gallery stilled. Even Judy paused for a fraction of a second, reading sincerity she didn't expect. Good, Judy said softly. Because real accountability doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the silence afterward. The line landed like scripture, not loud, not cruel, just true. Camilla's eyes welled. She turned slightly toward Rosa, her lips parting. I didn't mean to ruin you, she said quietly. I just wanted to win something. Rosa's reply came barely audible. Then you did. Camilla's head tilted, confused. You won the truth, Rosa said, and it cost you everything else. Judge Judy's gavel tapped once, not as punishment, but as punctuation. Court will reconvene tomorrow for the formal apology. As everyone stood, Camilla didn't move. She just stared at the empty chair where her father had sat. And for the first time, she didn't look like a thorn. She looked human. The next morning, the courtroom was different. No perfume. No diamonds, no reporters whispering about designer brands, only the sound of rain tapping softly against the windows, as if the sky itself wanted to bear witness. Camilla Thorn entered quietly. No entourage, no smirk. Her once flawless hair was pulled into a plain bun, her face bare of makeup. The same cameras that once adored her now pointed at her like weapons. But she didn't flinch. Judge Judy sat already in her chair, calm and watchful. Rosa was there too, no longer trembling, no longer small. Just steady. "Ms. Thorn," Judy said, voice even, "you may proceed with your statement." Camilla unfolded a piece of paper with hands that trembled just enough to betray her effort to seem composed. For a moment she stared at the words she'd written, as if hoping they might rewrite themselves. "They didn't," she began. "My name is Camilla Thorn." A pause, one heartbeat too, "and I have come to accept that my actions hurt people who trusted me. I withheld wages, I manipulated, and I used my father's name to protect myself when I should have been protecting others." A hush swept over the room. Even the bailiff looked down, respectful. Camilla's voice quavered. "I believed power was control. I believed money could erase guilt. But all it did was make me forget who I was before I started pretending to be untouchable." She exhaled shakily, eyes glistening. "To Rosa Martinez, I am sorry. You worked for me with grace I didn't deserve. You endured my cruelty because you needed that job, and I exploited that. I can't undo what I did, but I can face it." Her voice cracked. The paper in her hands shook. She looked up, directly at Rosa, for the first time without armor. "I wanted to win. I thought victory meant being feared. But standing here, I finally understand. Victory is standing at all when there's nothing left to hide behind." A tear slipped down her cheek. The cameras caught it, but no one cheered, no one sneered. Even the air felt reverent, the kind of silence that only follows a truth finally spoken aloud. Judy's expression softened slightly, though her voice remained firm. "Ms. Thorn, do you believe what you've just said?" Camilla nodded, voice breaking. "For the first time in my life." Judy let the silence stretch, then said simply, "Then that's enough." Camilla blinked. "Enough?" "Enough for the law," Judy replied. "But the rest, the real change, that's between you and the mirror." Rosa's eyes filled, not with triumph, but something gentler. Forgiveness she didn't plan to give, but couldn't hold back. Camilla folded the paper and set it down. "Thank you, Your Honor." Judy looked toward the clerk. "Enter her apology into record." Then, quieter, almost to herself, "Power fades fast. Character echoes longer." The gavel rose slowly, but before it fell, the rain outside grew louder, drowning out everything else but truth. Rain still streaked the courtroom windows in slow, silver lines. It wasn't the violent kind of rain, it was cleansing, steady, patient, the kind that waits until the storm is over to remind you that everything, even pain, eventually washes away. Rosa Martinez stood by the double doors, clutching the ruling folder close to her chest. The reporters had already gathered outside, umbrellas glinting under camera lights. She wasn't used to being the story. She was used to being the shadow behind someone else's success. Now the shadow had a name and a voice. A journalist called out, "Ms. Martinez! How do you feel now that justice has been served?" Rosa looked up at the grey sky and answered softly, "Justice isn't something you feel. It's something you see, when silence finally listens." She stepped back inside the courtroom, avoiding the crowd. Inside it was nearly empty. Only Camilla remained, still seated at the defendants' table, staring at the grain of the polished wood like it might offer her a way out. The two women locked eyes for the first time, without a judge, without lawyers, without audience. Just human to human. Rosa took a slow step forward. Camilla's voice came barely above a whisper. "You don't have to stay." Rosa hesitated. "Neither do you." Camilla let out a quiet laugh, hollow, broken, real. "I don't know where else to go." Rosa nodded, her tone soft but firm. "Then maybe start somewhere you can't buy." That silence stretched, not awkward but fragile, like truth learning how to breathe again. From the bench, Judge Judy sat finishing her notes. The rain reflected faint streaks of light across her glasses. She didn't interrupt. She just watched. Two women standing in the aftermath of ego, one rebuilt, the other beginning to. Camilla finally looked up. "Do you think people change?" Rosa's answer came without hesitation. "Only when they stop performing. It was quiet again, only the hum of the lights and the distant roll of thunder. Camilla lowered her gaze, and for a second, her reflection on the glossy table almost looked like a stranger's. She touched it lightly with her fingertips, a wordless promise to remember the woman she'd been, so she wouldn't become her again. Judge Judy stood, straightening her robe. "This court will reconvene for final verdict." Her voice filled the room, not loud but absolute. Rosa nodded to Camilla once. Not forgiveness, not friendship, just closure. Then she walked toward the exit, each step lighter than the last. Camilla stayed seated. Her eyes followed Rosa until the doors closed. Then, just before Judy spoke, she whispered to herself, "I thought I owned the world. Turns out I was just renting respect." The gavel rested quietly in Judy's hand. For a moment she didn't strike it. She just looked between the two empty tables, one that fought for truth and one that hid from it. Then softly she said, "Final ruling. Before you hear the verdict, tell me honestly, do you believe people like Camilla can truly change, or do they just learn to hide their arrogance better?" The rain had stopped. Only the faint hiss of water running down the courthouse steps remained, like the world itself was rinsing away what no one wanted to keep. Judge Judy raised the gavel slowly, her eyes heavy with something beyond authority, understanding. "Case 3274, she began, voice clear and unhurried. "Rosa Martinez versus Camilla Thorn. Judgment in favor of the plaintiff." The words fell like stones into still water, final, echoing, irreversible. Camilla didn't flinch. Not this time. She simply bowed her head, the posture of someone finally too tired to perform. The arrogance was gone. What remained was a woman learning how to exist without armor. Judy continued. "Full restitution will be issued to the plaintiff, including damages and legal costs." She paused, looking directly at Camilla. "Additionally, the court will refer this case to the Department of Labor for review of falsified documentation. They will determine if further civil penalties are appropriate." Camilla nodded once, eyes glistening. No protest, no lawyer's whisper. Just quiet acceptance. Rosa exhaled, her fingers gripping the edge of the table like it might steady her emotions. It wasn't triumph that filled her face. It was release. For the first time in 2 years, she wasn't fighting anymore. Judy leaned back in her chair, voice softening. "Ms. Martinez, you showed grace when revenge would have been easy." "And Miss Thorn." Camilla looked up, startled by the sound of her name said without venom. "You learned the hardest lesson a person of privilege can learn, that respect cannot be inherited, only earned." The line hung in the air, sharp and luminous. Judy stood, robe flowing with deliberate calm. "Court is adjourned." The gavel came down, not in fury but in finality. The crowd began to stir. Reporters whispered into phones. Pens scratched across notebooks. But for a brief moment no one moved toward the exit. Everyone lingered in that strange quiet between justice and emotion, the pause before the world resumes pretending it's ordinary again. Camilla stood slowly. She looked at Rosa across the aisle. For once she didn't reach for her purse, her phone, or her image. She just nodded, a silent thank you or maybe a goodbye. Rosa returned the nod, small and sincere. No words, no forgiveness. Just acknowledgement, the kind that matters more. Judge Judy watched the exchange with an almost invisible smile. It wasn't joy. It was peace, the rare kind that follows when truth has finally done its work. As Rosa stepped out into the sunlight, her reflection caught in the courthouse glass. No longer the assistant, no longer invisible, but a woman who stood her ground and won it back. Camilla stayed behind, seated at the defense table. The last camera flash caught her in profile. Not a villain, not a victim, just human. She whispered softly to herself, "Maybe that's enough." Judge Judy turned toward the clerk, murmuring the final line that would close the day. "Power borrowed from fear never lasts." The courtroom emptied one row at a time, the sound of footsteps fading beneath the soft light, breaking through the clouds. And in that golden silence, justice didn't roar. It exhaled,